Hang on, Nat. Yep.
Hello. I just realized I was talking to myself. Can everyone hear me? Yep, awesome. So, hello, thanks for popping on today. Just so you don't think I normally wear my pharmacy jacket for video calls, I have just come from work. So that's why I'm wearing a pharmacy jacket. I've also got the baby monitor in the background, so hopefully I'll get through it all before Bubs wakes up. But if I have to dash, I promise to be really quick. So, brain health. I'm just going to share my screen and hopefully we can have a few. This is the first thing I'm going to show you. This is a photo of my pop. So this is, obviously that's not his hair, but this is the reason I got interested in brain health in particular. So my pop now, he's 92 and he has Alzheimer's disease. And the impact that that's had on him and on our families is cannot be overstated. So that's what started my journey into looking into brain health, and then also being a mum of 3 little pork chops was where I started looking into sort of kids' health and the brain health in particular. So what I've done today is just I've got a few different presentations that look at EHT and brain health. So I've sort of taken some slides from different ones and hopefully it'll work together as one. Can everyone see? Yep, says brain defense, beautiful. Okay, so for those of you who don't know me, my background, I'm a pharmacist and I currently work some shifts in community, but I'm mainly working at the Poisons Information Centre here in Sydney, which is that 131126 number you ring when your kids get into something that they shouldn't. And in my past, I've also been a medicinal chemist. So what a medicinal chemist is we basically look at the chemistry of medications and drugs, and I did my honours degree in drug discovery from natural sources. So when it comes to EHT, I've got a bit of a background into sort of how they did it, which is amazing. So one thing I've got to be really careful of, guys, obviously with EHT, we need to be very, very careful with our compliance. And it's not just so that we don't get into trouble with the company. It's for the integrity of our product. You know, it is an absolutely phenomenal product and the potential that it has is amazing. But we need to be careful that we are all, when it comes to health and conditions and things, we are all unqualified to quote. So the problem that we have if we start sprouting off medical terms or try and talk about the science is that we lose our integrity and the integrity of EHT. So everything that I talk about in this presentation, I want you to be clear on. We need to stick to the compliance and stick to what we know EHT does and what the research has shown. Happy to answer questions on that, but definitely must stick to compliance. Okay, so let's have a look at our brain health. Who out there, I can see some of you, would think about, has thought about your brain health, or you take a supplement for your brain? Anyone? Raise your hand if you can. Does anyone take anything for their brain or before EHT? No, you don't really think about it. What about things like who out there would wear glasses? Okay, you might take vitamin D or calcium. You might, you might be on blood pressure medications, or you'd be aware that, that you need to exercise, eat well to help your cardiovascular system. Okay, so I think as Australia, we are quite health literate in that we know there are things that we need to do for our health, and we're very lucky in being a rich country in that we have access to some of the best supplements, medicines, and healthcare to help keep us as healthy as possible. The problem is no one is talking about our brain. And there was a survey that said, how important is brain health? And most people went, grand scheme of things, not that important. Everyone's brains are pretty good. And then they asked the question, how important is mental health? And people, mental health is huge. We really need to be looking after our mental health. The government needs to be putting a lot of money into mental health. There are so many people suffering. Mental health, guys, is brain health. Okay? People see mental health as symptoms, a range of symptoms, but those symptoms are not airy-fairy. They're just the result of damage in our brains. Okay? If you guys had a sore knee, you would go to the doctor. The doctor might order an X-ray, CT scan, MRI scan, so that you can actually visualize the damage that's happening in your knee. The problem is all the mental health things are diagnosed of symptoms. So it's very difficult to actually see what's going on in the brain. And many brain diseases are actually only diagnosed through autopsies. So I'll talk a little bit about chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And the symptoms of that disease can actually start in early 20s, okay? But it's not diagnosed until autopsy, until that person dies. So it's very hard to treat a disease that we can't diagnose first. So what I wanted to do today is get people thinking about what your brain health actually means. And in one of my presentations, I do a little skit, which we might do now. So everyone raise a hand. I usually say raise your right hand, but we're not in a court of law. Raise your right hand and put a finger down if you have ever walked into a room and then stopped dead because you've got no idea what you went into the room for. Put a finger down if you've ever wondered if you locked the car or the front door. Or put a finger down if you've wondered if you turned the hair straightener off, which I do a lot. Put a finger down if you've ever called your kids by the wrong name. I think I have to put all of those down. Put a finger down if you slept better 10 years ago than you do today. What else have I got? Put a finger down if you ever get distracted by the TV or social media. Has anyone got any fingers left? I can see a few people with fingers left, which is kind of annoying. I could keep going, but I think most of us, and I always thought that my brain's pretty healthy, but these are all things that we do. And it's a sign because our brains start aging from about our late 20s to early 30s. Okay, so our brains are already aging, and that's without any of the health conditions that are affecting our brains. So just by that little exercise, you can see that that's our brain health. Those symptoms that we do are symptoms of our brains maybe not being as healthy as they could be. You know when I said that we can't actually visualize what's going on in our brains? So research letely, we have been able to. And what this is an example of here is what's called a SPECT scan. So what a SPECT scan does, our brains only have one thing for food. They can only use glucose for food. They can't use proteins, carbohydrates, anything else like that. It's all got to be glucose. So what they did was if they attach a radioactive marker onto a glucose molecule and then scan it, you can actually see the activity of the brain. So here on the left is a SPECT scan of a healthy brain. You can see it's nice and symmetrical. Okay, don't worry about the colors, but it's nice and smooth, it's well-rounded, there's no major holes. Over here with an unhealthy brain, you can see it looks a bit like some cheddar cheese. Okay, there's lots of holes. It's not.
Sorry, Nat, can I interrupt for a second? I can't actually see what you're talking about. Like, it's still a picture of your grandfather.
Oh.
Does anyone else still see that?
Yeah, we got pop still.
Oh, no. Has anyone got mental health is brain health in the picture?
No.
No.
Right.
No.
It's still a picture of Pop. Oh, that's bad.
He's a dude.
Let me try again. Sorry, guys.
Hey,
I could have gone through the whole presentation. All right. How about now?
Yes.
Okay. So, sorry. So this is who I am. Went through that. This is our slide about what we use, brain health, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So mental health is brain health. Okay. So this is a SPECT scan. Okay. So here on the left, healthy brain, symmetrical, nicely rounded. This shows a brain that's working well. Over here on the right, an unhealthy brain. Okay. These gaps or holes represent areas of the brain that are not showing any activity. Okay, so it's pretty scary. So, and this is not just at a snapshot in time, it's over a length of time. People who for different reasons are unhealthy, okay, this is what your brain starts to look like. And I've also got other slides to show that the biggest thing to our brain health is actually our age. Okay, it doesn't matter how healthy we are. Obviously, as our bodies age, so do our brains. Okay, but now we are able to start seeing what our brains are looking like. So let's see. Okay. So we might think, I should have put up a slide of what an Alzheimer's brain looks like. A lot of people see brain diseases like your Alzheimer's and dementias as old age. But the truth is that brain health affects everyone, right from like little bubs, my son's age, right through to the elderly, okay? And we don't think of it as brain health though. So let's have a look at a few of the statistics, because mental health or brain health problems amongst everyone of all ages is increasing. So with our kids, obviously I've just done this one, 11% of children are now diagnosed with ADHD, and that's an increase over the last decade. 4% of children have a diagnosed learning disability, and 10 to 16% of children are perceived by teachers to have a learning disability. So one of the things with brain diseases in kids like ADHD, ADD, learning processing disorders, it's very difficult to diagnose because it's a set of symptoms. So for example, to have a diagnosis of ADHD, you have to meet, I think it's 5 symptoms of ADHD. So you've got to have a child who's displaying 4 symptoms of ADHD, but they won't actually reach a diagnosis. So they're still having all these symptoms of when I say brain damage, I mean, some sort of symptoms that are showing a level of, dysfunction in the brain, but it's not reaching those diagnoses. Scarily, 6.9% of Australian children suffer from anxiety and 2.8% suffer from major depressive disorders. And when we look at statistics, they cap kids at 14, okay? So anything above that's adolescence. So that's 2.8% of kids below 14 are suffering from major depressive disorders, and 7% are suffering from anxiety. Part of my work at the Poison Centre is we do a lot of work with drug overdoses. And one of the biggest things that shocked me when I started working there was how young kids were who were self-harming. So who were taking medications deliberately as a thing. 12 to 14-year-olds, particularly girls, there's a large number of girls taking medications. And it's really scary. When you think back to our childhoods and what I was doing when I was 12, that these kids are being sort of subjected to things that are causing damage to their brains. Adolescents, 1 in 4 Australians aged between 15 and 19 meet the criteria for having a probable mental health issue. There's rising incidences of addictions, so whether that be to screen time, whether that be to drugs, alcohol, addictions are rising. Obviously, drug use is a big problem. Most of that drug use is, of course, recreational, but marijuana, recreational drugs are toxins to our brains. And you can look up the SPECT scans of brains from people who have been using those drugs, and they are scary, the amount of damage that drug use will do to your brain. And the self-harm that I was just talking about, adolescence is probably one of the biggest population groups that we see self-harming. And again, it's a vicious cycle, because depression and mental health disorders is what can cause people to lead to addictions and drug use. But then that addictions and drug use are then causing more brain damage. So it's a never-ending cycle causing damage to our brains. Adults, 1 in 6 Australians are currently expressing depression or anxiety. So not at some point in their life, because those statistics will go up, but at this very point, 1 in 6 Australians. 7.4 million Australians are getting inadequate sleep. So it's interesting, back in, I think it was 2007, the World Health Organization actually classified shift work as a carcinogen. And that's because of the effect that inadequate sleep and the effect of shift work on your melatonin and circadian rhythms, the effect that has on your health. So the amount of sleep that people are not getting is having a big impact on their brain health. 14% of people complain of brain fog. So that'll be your symptoms of poor memory, poor focus, poor clarity. Suicide is obviously a very big incident. One thing I want to point out with all of this is that the damage that occurs to our brain occurs a long time before we see the symptoms. And that's a big point with things like dementia. So obviously in the elderly, dementia is a huge problem at the moment. It's the second leading cause of death, leading cause of disability. And the number of people living with dementia is expected to triple by the time we reach 2050. But if we look at dementia and we look at other issues like depression and the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which I'll talk about later, what people have found is that the damage to our brains is occurring a long time before people are seeing the symptoms. So I like to think about it, if you'll all remember, it was one of my favourite TV shows, but The Price is Right. Does everyone, Naughty, who remember that TV show? Yep. And you remember one of my favourite games was the mountain climber, and the little dude, that annoying Swiss tune, would climb up the mountain until eventually he dropped off the cliff. And that's what it's like with brain diseases. So the damage is occurring, it's happening, and then eventually the amount of damage to our brain reaches a threshold, and then we start getting symptoms. Also, we fall off the cliff. But that damage is occurring 20 years before we start seeing the symptoms. So the research has shown that, particularly for Alzheimer's disease, you can see structural changes in the brain 20 years before people are showing the symptoms of Alzheimer's. And that's why they're so hard to treat, because the damage has been done years and years ago before the diagnosis is being made. Okay, so it's pretty scary. We need to look at how and why we're damaging our brains so that we have a chance to reverse that damage that we're doing to it. So one of the big reasons that we're seeing increases in mental health and brain health disorders is our diet, okay? Refined sugar. Sugar is a toxin to our brain. So yes, we need glucose in order for our brains to function, but when we have too much sugar, it's a toxin, okay? And you can see direct damage to brain structures because of sugar. In Australia, 35% of our average energy intake is from junk food and highly processed snacks. Okay, so we've, as a country, and this is, in a lot of Western countries, we've moved away from eating fresh food, from cooking. We've moved on to the convenient food, which is packed full of refined sugar. The other thing that happened was that I believe it was around the 80s. I was only a baby then, but that's when low-fat diets became quite trendy, and a lot of products now have moved towards low-fat. And fat, we need fat, okay? We need fat, particularly our brains. The membranes of our brain cells have fat in them. So fat is not our enemy, refined sugar is. And a lot of the low-fat products out there are packed full of sugar. So people are now starting to become aware of the importance of fats. I'm talking about good fats, so your essential fatty acids, your omega-3s, your omega-6s, your ALAs, which are the precursor to omega-3s and 6s from plant sources. Things like avocado, nuts, fish oils, your salmon, fishy oils, oily fish, I should say, are vital. So in kids, for an example, they recommend to have 2 to 3 serves of an oily fish a week. My kids don't get that. They're lucky if I try and get at least 1 to 2 into them, but we're just not meeting any of the criteria for a good diet. Mediterranean diet with a little bit more extra fats thrown in is one of the best diets out there. Sedentary lifestyle, so 65% of adults are either sedentary or have a low level of exercise. So this obviously impacts on the health of our whole body, because as we engage in physical activity, we get better at moving oxygen around. If our brain doesn't have oxygen, it dies. Okay, so do you need to keep moving for our brain? Big problem in kids and adolescents in that they're not meeting physical activity requirements. And like I said, that decreases the amount of oxygen to the brain. And it also, you also see protein aggregates build up in the blood. Basically, think of things like cholesterol, okay? We get fatty arteries, proteins build up. Again, that's less oxygen being delivered to our brain. We're having decreased downtime. So obviously our brain needs to rest and repair. And this is the biggest issue with sleep. It is when we are sleeping or when our brain's in a rest cycle. So, meditation is great. Even just having some silent time during the day, that downtime is what our brains need to have to repair. Okay, so that's when our memories are converted to long-term memories. It's when cell growth and repair goes on. But if we look at our lives, everyone at the moment, we work all hours. We can work from our phones. Okay, so we're not getting the downtime that we used to, particularly in kids and adolescents. Again, screen time. You're on screen all the time, and though you might think you're resting because you might be lying down in bed, the screen is actually very activating to your brain. I know my boys, if they watch TV for an hour before they go to bed, they don't go to sleep, and that's because it's activating your brain. It's increasing the cortisol hormone release, and it's activating. It's causing stress in the body and the brain. So we're not getting that amount of downtime we need for our brain to repair and to grow. And the other problem is we are living in a very toxic world. So actually found this on Facebook the other day. It popped up, and it was saying, people, I don't want you guys to freak out about glyphosate. I get lots of calls at the Poison Centre about glyphosate. And yes, if you drink a whole bottle of Roundup, it can be very, very bad. But in general, it's the buildup of toxins everywhere through our environment, through our food that we're eating, that is causing damage to our bodies. Why toxins can be particularly bad for our brains is there is a thing called the blood-brain barrier, and it's actually a protective mechanism. So things have to be very fatty to cross from our blood into our brains. And while that protects our brains, it can also mean that once toxins get into our brains, it's very hard for our systems to get it back out of our brains. Okay, so we can see toxins build up in our brains and cause direct damage. Is this making sense to everyone? I know it's a bit quick. Yep, cool. All right, so what can we do? First and foremost, sleep. Okay, you need to reboot your brain just like a computer. Sorry, I'm just seeing the dust that's on my computer. Getting as much sleep as possible and good quality sleep. Okay, and that's our hormones play a large part in sleep. Estrogen and testosterone are very protective for our brain. So when women go through menopause, obviously our estrogen levels drop. And that's why that's a time when a lot of women's brain health can decrease, because they're not getting that protective effect from estrogen, and they stop sleeping as well. So allowing yourself the time to rest, turn off the screens, look into good sleep hygiene to maximize the amount of sleep and rest that you're getting. Physical and mental health, obviously we want to increase the amount of oxygen getting to our brain, so engaging in physical exercise and keeping our bodies as healthy as possible is going to correlate to having a healthy brain as well. Mental exercise is very important for your brain. Our brains are quite unique in that they have something that's called neuronal plasticity, and what that refers to is that from the day that we are born to the day that we die, our brain has the ability to learn and create new connections between neurons and grow, okay? And what it needs to do that, to continually grow, is to be stimulated. So you'll often see the elderly engaging in learning dance steps, learning a new language, anything that's stimulating your brain and making it learn. Even the brain teaser puzzles, EHT helps with those, by the way. It's stimulating your brain and creating new connections between neurons and making your brain grow. Okay. Yes, we all lose neurons as we age, but we can make new ones. So it's that mental exercise that we need to counteract the ones that we lose by making new ones. I've spoken about diet, so as much as possible, low in sugar, high in good fats. Water's really important for our brains. Our brain is made up of about 60 to 70% of water. And if we're dehydrated, if you're even a little bit dehydrated, that's when people often get brain fog, and your brain's just not working as well because it doesn't have the water it needs to function properly. So a lot of people find that they have brain fog in the mornings, and they go and run to the coffee pot to get the caffeine as a stimulant. They'd be better off going for a glass of water. And this is how I remember to take my EHT every morning, because the first thing I do when I wake up is go and have a glass of water. If you've got to think, we've been asleep for hopefully around 8 hours, and in that time we haven't drunk any water. We're still losing hydration because just through our breath, basically, So when we wake up, our brains are actually a little bit dehydrated. So if you, easy tip, first thing in the morning, have a glass of water. Avoiding toxins, drugs, marijuana, excessive alcohol, sounds pretty obvious. But that obviously they're a huge detriment to our brain. And protecting your brain. So I've mentioned chronic traumatic encephalopathy a couple of times. People will be aware that you can obviously do big brain injuries. If you're in a car accident, you can have concussion. You know, if you fall off your bike and you're not wearing a helmet, those sorts of things can obviously cause a direct injury to your brain. But what people are starting to find is there's a lot of repetitive, smaller injuries to our brain is causing a lot of damage. And it's things like people who play contact sports, where you're constantly receiving small hits to the head that aren't enough to see any symptoms, but it's still doing brain damage. So protecting your brain, wear seatbelts, wear your helmet, things like that. These are the different nutritional supplements that are out there available for brain health, okay? Obviously, all parts of our health need help sometimes, okay? And these are great to help keep our brains healthy. Omega-3 fatty acids, that's those good fats that I was talking about. So what they do is they act as an antioxidant to reduce the amount of aging or oxidative stress and damage that is done to the brain. So right around the world, people are not really getting enough omega-3 to meet criteria. So there are plenty of good supplements available. I would recommend, if you do want to take an omega-3 fatty acid supplement, go to the pharmacy, talk to the pharmacist and get a good one, because there's a lot of crap out there as well, particularly the ones for kids that have a shitload of sugar in them. Very counterintuitive, but anyway. Alpha lipoic acid. This is an antioxidant, and it helps in glucose metabolism. So if you remember, I said our brain only uses glucose as food. What this supplement does is it increases the efficiency that it can use glucose. So it's maximizing the availability of the glucose for proper functioning. Probiotics for gut health. Gut health is huge, and there's so much research going into the link between our brains and our guts. And the bacteria in our gut, they directly talk to our brain, okay? And they affect its health. So this is an emerging area, so I won't say too much about it, but be on the lookout, because having a healthy gut microbiome, healthy gut bacteria is very big for our brain health. Different B vitamins, there's like nutrients for our brains. They're in a lot of the stress formulations you'll see. Barocca, a lot of B vitamins. A lot of people aren't deficient in B vitamins though, so definitely take a B vitamin supplement if you think you are lacking, but it can be a little bit of a waste of money if you're not lacking, because you will just pee them straight out because they're water soluble. So easiest way to tell if you're lacking in B vitamins is to take a Barocca, go to the toilet about an hour later, and if your pee is bright yellow or orange, you're not deficient in B vitamins, because you're just peeing them all out. EHT, tau protein and brain cell structure support, which I'll talk about in a minute, and ginkgo biloba. I think I might have gone way over my time. Have I gone way over my time, Rach? maybe not.
Keep going.
Keep going.
Yeah.
All right. So that is brain health. For the interest of time, I will keep going and talking about EHT. Hopefully you'll understand why we need to start thinking about brain health, okay, and not having this disconnect between mental health and brain health, okay? We need to think of it, the whole thing, as brain health. Okay, the reason we're all here, EHT. I've been waiting for EHT for 2 years, and the brand partners who are on here will probably know that I've bugged the crap out of Rick Arnold in terms of what we can talk about with the science, because the science behind EHT blows me away. It is amazing, and I would encourage brand partners. I think hopefully you will be blown away by the science as I go through it, but it's not something that you want to be talking about to your customers, okay? And the reason I say that is because I guess the easiest way to put it is, if I wanted advice on my hair, I wouldn't go and ask my car mechanic for advice on my hair, okay? you know, my fashion sense is absolutely shocking. Okay. And if I tried to give anyone fashion advice, they would laugh at me. And I think that's the problem that we see with a lot of, that we run into with MLM companies, is that people who are unqualified, okay, trying to give advice or saying that it can treat this health condition and that, and people just go, whatever, you're just trying to sell it to me. And we don't want that for EHT, because we want as many people to have it as possible, because it will be such a benefit. So I would say, and to be honest, a lot of people won't care about the science. Share the testimonials. And if people are interested in the science or anything, then connect to your upline and get, you know, there's plenty of doctors, there's plenty of pharmacists with Neora. Get them talking to someone who has that understanding behind them and can explain it. For example, don't repeat this to corporate because they'll probably hate me, but I hate that one of our leaflets about EHT says that it supports bone health. And the reason for that is it contains vitamin D. So yes, we can claim that it supports bone health, but for example, it contains the amount of vitamin D in EHT is 40 international units. Now, if someone came to me in the pharmacy and they wanted vitamin D for bone health, because vitamin D is very important for bone health, the supplements that you can buy for about $15 at the pharmacy contain 1,000 international units. So if you go out there and you say to someone, oh, you're looking for something for your bones, take EHT, it supports your bone health. Not only are you doing them a disservice, but once they figure out that you're charging them $80 for bone health, when they can get a much better product for their bone health for a lot less, we start to lose all our integrity. So use your testimonials, stay within your knowledge, and use your upline as you need to. Okay, that's all I'm going to say about that. Okay, looking at our brains. The way our brains work is they communicate through things called neurons. Okay, so in brain tissue the size of a grain of sand, we have 100,000 neurons and over 1 billion connections between those neurons. So you can imagine how much we have in our entire brain. And what a neuron is, it's like an electrical wire, okay, that carries electricity. So everything that our brain does, every thought we have, every memory, every hormone that's released, every movement we make, any sort of process in our body starts with a message to the brain. And that message is carried along a neuron. So the message is carried from one neuron to another along a series to get a message from one part of the brain to another part, or from the brain to the body. So keeping these neurons healthy is vital to ensuring healthy functioning brain, okay? Because if our neurons start to degrade, we obviously can't get messages either as quickly as they need to go, or where they need to go. So you can imagine if you get a break in an electrical wire, the electricity is no longer going to be able to flow along that electrical wire as well. So this is what my husband does not like my slinkies. So you'll have to give me a little thumbs up if you like my slinkies, so I can tell him to shove it up his bum. But this is what we're looking at with a healthy neuron. Okay, this is the structure of a neuron, and what provides the structure to that neuron, what's like the filaments of the electrical wire, is called a microtubule. Okay, so this is the electrical wire, the microtubule. What keeps the structure of those microtubules is these green proteins called a tau protein. Okay, so that's like it's like the mortar in between bricks. It keeps it all nice and steady. So a nice, happy, healthy neuron has a nice, happy, functioning microtubule with the tau molecule around it. So I like to think of it as a slinky. So you can imagine if you had to pass a message along that slinky, it'd be pretty easy to get through the slinky. What happens as we start to age, or we start to degrade our neurons, it's what your slinky looks like after your kids have gotten a hold of it. Okay, so if you look at that slinky, it's going to be pretty damn hard to get a message along it. Okay, and what's happening to the neuron is that we're seeing the tau protein, this green protein, is being pulled off the microtubule, so it forms a clump. Okay, once that tau protein gets pulled off the microtubule and forms a clump, the microtubule, it starts to degrade. It loses its structure. Okay, and as you can see here in the neuron, it means that the neuron's not functioning as well. It can no longer pass those messages. So this is a very gradual process, both the tau protein falling off and the neurons degrading. So as the tau proteins fall off, the neuron, it can keep up for a while. Communication will get slower and slower along the neuron until eventually that neuron can no longer pass a message on. The brain can get around that for a while. It can use other neurons, okay? But that's the accumulation effect I was talking about. We get more and more tau protein being pulled off. We get more and more neurons dying, and eventually we'll no longer be able to communicate to all parts of the brain, okay? Obviously, brain diseases are very complex. There's many things that cause brain aging and brain damage, and this is just one of them, but this is a major part of a lot of brain diseases. Can everyone give me a nod if that made sense? Sort of? Yep, cool. All right. So there's been lots of studies done over the last 50 years or so, and population studies. And what they found was that there is some link between people who drink coffee and having a lower risk of dementia. Okay, there was a major one where they found that people who drank 3 to 5 cups of coffee daily in their midlife was associated with a 65% decrease in the risk of dementia or Alzheimer's disease. And that 65% is a huge number, okay? Personally, I'm pretty stoked that these people managed to get to late life, because drinking 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day is not good for our overall health, and these people will probably die of a heart attack. Okay, so I definitely don't recommend drinking that amount of coffee. But there is something in coffee that is having a beneficial effect on our brains, okay? And that's what the team at Signum Biosciences and many other people around the world set out to look like. This makes the medicinal chemistry part of me quite happy. So what they did was they take a coffee bean, they ground it up, okay, and then they separated it out into its different chemical components, and then they started testing all those different chemical components against different enzymes, different proteins. And what they found was EHT. So just so you're aware of the difference, this is a molecule EHT, so eicosanoyl 5-hydroxytryptamide. The EHT of our product has this molecule in it, but it obviously has the other components as well, okay? So all the things I'm talking about here, I'm talking about the molecule EHT. What they found, they did in rat studies, okay? They studied rats with Alzheimer's disease, okay? And this is what they found, okay? So just so you're aware, this is rats. Over here on the left, we have our happy neuron, okay? Nice and structural, tau protein in place, keeping it together nice and happy. Over here on the right, we have a neuron that's being degraded, okay? So it's losing its tau protein. Now this exists in our body in a tug of war, okay? So in a nice healthy brain, it's a tug of war and it's fairly balanced. There's an enzyme called a kinase and it pulls the tau protein off, okay? It's like the bad guy. There's another enzyme called PP2A. It's the good guy. It encourages the tau protein to stay on the microtubule. So it's a tug of war between these two things, okay? And when we've got a happy, healthy functioning brain, it's all in balance. What happens as we start to get older, we start to age, or we're a little bit unhealthy and we start getting damage to our brain, is that there starts to be an imbalance and we start to get more and more and more neurons degraded. Where EHT works, is it works on PP2A. Okay, so it ensures PP2A is doing its job. It keeps it healthy, working well, so that where it's optimizing the amount of neurons. So what it's literally doing is protecting and stabilizing that tau protein, okay, to keep it on the neuron. So what they found is it optimizes the communication between neurons, because you're not getting the degradation of neurons, okay? We're fortifying our natural brain function. So we're not changing anything in our body. We're not changing any neurotransmitters. We're not doing anything artificially. We're just promoting our own natural bodily functions. It increases our focus, our mental alertness, and our memory and recall. It enhances our energy stores, and it also boosts our immune system. So the actual product of EHT that we've got, it contains that molecule. It's decaffeinated, so you can be quite happy if your customers are concerned there's got caffeine in it. No, it doesn't, it's fine. It was developed, it got money for its development through quite a few different fabulous research institutions because of the potential that it shows for different brain diseases. So the Michael J. Fox Foundation looks at Parkinson's disease, and EHT is showing great benefits for Parkinson's in rats. The Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation, and there's also a $10 million NIH grant that Signum Biosciences was awarded for further research into EHT. Excuse me. Articles have been published in a lot of journals that you can see there, and they are available from the Signum Biosciences website. It took me a couple of weeks to be able to get my head around them, so I wouldn't recommend reading them yourself, but they can be good if you have a health professional who's interested in the nitty-gritty. What it's doing, as we just talked about, it's keeping neuron connections strong for healthy communication. And it's important to note that EHT is still belongs to Signum Biosciences. So it's not owned by Neora. Neora just has the distribution rights around the world. So I put this up before, the nutritional supplements that's beneficial for our brains. The ones highlighted in green are what's included in our Australian version of EHT. Okay, so you got your alpha lipoic acid, your B vitamins, your ginkgo biloba, and also your EHT. The big point though, guys, is that EHT, the molecule, you can't get that anywhere else. Okay, there are a lot of different companies out there who sell products for your brain, and they'll basically be a mixture of ginkgo, B vitamins, different things like that. Some herbs, might have a bit of valerian, but they're all fairly similar, okay? You can only get EHT through us, so that is our selling point. And so obviously you're optimizing the communication and you're keeping neurons healthy. So it protects against mental decline, which is huge. But what people are noticing is the immediate effects, or within a month or two: better recall, better sleep, better immunity. The point I like to notice here, it's hard for people to notice, and it just depends what they're focused on. So they'll probably be getting a lot of benefits from the EHT, but they'll pick out the one that they notice. So for example, shift workers will probably notice that they're getting better sleep because their sleep sucks. Me at the moment, I haven't found EHT, I haven't found me getting more sleep because my baby's up 5 times a night. So I'm not getting more sleep. My dad rang me up the other day, and he's been taking EHT for about a month now. And I don't know what he thought I was giving him, but he rings me up and he goes, "Hey, Nat." And he sounds shocked. And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "I think this shit you're giving me is actually working." And I'm like, "Really?" I said, "I've only spent the last couple of months, going through the science and that with him." He goes, I can remember people's names and I can never remember people's names. So I don't know what he thought I was trying to sell him. It was a load of crap, but that's what he noticed because he's always been a really good sleeper. So just be aware, there's a lot of benefits, but it'll just depend on what they noticed as to what they tell you. "Oh my goodness, it did this for me." Kids who are studying, they might find they can study and concentrate better. They're probably getting all the benefits. It's just what they notice. And I think that's where I'll finish up. I'm just opening up chat now. So okay, so I'll hand back over. Thank you everyone for listening. I hope I haven't gone too much over time, Rach. I tend to wobble on a bit. I know we need to get going, but I'm not sure if, has Rach buggered off, has she? Did I bore her?
No, I'm still here. Nat, amazing. Can you just unshare your screen for me? We'll be amazing.
Oh, sorry.
Everybody, I want everyone to please, just in the chat, give Nat heaps of love. Like, isn't it incredible to really have a thorough, first of all, understanding about our brain? We don't talk about our brain. What is going on in our brains and what do we need to know? I mean, I think about my mum, and she talks about, she likes using her night cream, but she says, it's what's on inside my head. That's the important part that she wants to keep sharp. She can get her skin or looking a little, prettier and all the rest, but it is absolutely in here that is her concern. She always says, "I just don't want to lose my marbles." And we hear people say that all the time, and understanding that we can find ways on an overall lifestyle to actually know not just EHT, but more than EHT, what we can be doing to make sure we don't lose our marbles. But Nat, I really loved the whole presentation, and even on actually EHT, you know, what is it that actually is doing? Because I can tell you there'll be, as the general group of us, is that these are the things that people are going to be wanting to know.
Yeah,
what is it?
Yeah, just remember, pass them on to someone who can explain. We all talk about third-party validation being so important. Definitely is when you're talking about health, because you want people to have a good understanding of it. And I call it, like my team members, I call it the white jacket syndrome. You could have exactly the same amount of information as I do and give it exactly the same way, and people will just, as bad as it is, have that trust in health professionals more. So use your third party and your health professionals in your team. And
what's so fabulous is that we're all just talking to everyday people. You know, like we have the odd person in our world that might be someone in the medical field. Sure, they're going to want more information. And that's where Nat just said, you know, like that's where you refer them, or you hook them up with somebody that has that information, or you send them the link to the EHT and signumbioscience.com.
Yes.
You know, all the published papers are in there. That's the sort of information they want. But everyday people, they only want to know, what is it? What's it going to do? What's in it? And how long is it going to take for an effect?
Exactly.
That's all they want to know.
Exactly.
And so just keep it really, really simple. The most important thing that I really wanted to just be a part of in this presentation today was compliance. Nat has over and over told us today her profession. She's spoken to us from a professional point of view, from her industry point of view. We don't want to be having those conversations with people because, as she said, you know, and I 100% agree with this, that's the integrity of EHT. We're not medical professionals. We are people that have an incredible gift in our hand, and we can share this with other people. If you go into your back office and go into the marketing department, you will, and click on the Australian file, go to the EHT files, you will see exactly what we can and what we can't say. Don't overcomplicate it. I know so many people are confused and they're a bit overcomplicating things, and just don't overcomplicate it. Just the biggest rule that I have in my mind is don't add a medical condition into your repertoire of what you're talking about. Just talk about what's basically on the box. So next is what I have also asked is for Liz to come along. Her experience and knowledge, like Nat's, is from that professional point of view, but also she's had the last 3.5 years where in the US, they actually introduced this product into their repertoire of their business. It's really important to know, you know, we're now talking about, well, we've got our skincare range. How do we actually start to introduce a wellness range into our business? Because like Liz said to me, you know, the greatest thing that people don't know, that we do now, is we share before and after photos. I mean, we're not exactly going to share a before and after photo of our brain now, are we? So I've asked Liz to come along and talk to us about exactly that. And I'm going to handball it over to her so she can, oh, she's already unmuted and ready to rock.
Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Liz.
All right, I'm just going to share a little bit of my presentation. Nat, that was excellent. You did a great job at explaining. And EHT, I can get rather nerdy about it because it is very exciting. If we were all rats, we'd really have it, right? Because this has been tested on rats. One of the reasons why this product has not been tested on humans, human studies are very, very expensive, as you know. So we're going to be relying on a lot of before and afters, a lot of testimonials regarding that. But I'm just going to share my little bit of a screen here. And I do have a before and after, actually. Let me just get to it. Sorry. I've lost it. There we are. So this is my before and after, not a VHT, but from a brain injury. So when I was 19 years old, I had a bad car rollover, and I damaged the backside of my brain, my cerebellum. When you have a different brain damage, Nat, you may have said this, I'm not sure, but you have these cytokines, this immune system that it doesn't go away. So even an injury when you're a baby can affect you in your life today. I was diagnosed when I was 55, and I had the injury when I was 19. So once I got my brain fixed, I went to a functional neurologist. I am a lot more susceptible to injury and brain degeneration because I've had a brain injury. So for me, EHT has been a lifesaver. You can tell me, Nat, or have you covered why our culture needs this? Have you talked a little bit about that?
I talked about, what did I cover? Our diet, basically.
Okay.
Our toxins. What else I cover?
I'm
And
sorry,
like
I didn't catch the whole thing. I just flew in from I flew from Sydney to Melbourne, so I just missed it. So I'm just going to review why I think we need EHT more than ever, and then I'll talk about how we care for our customers and how we approach our customers and how we're going to give a little bit different customer service to our EHT customers. So here is some bad news. As of 2016, Alzheimer's or a brain disorder became the #1 killer of Australian women. I think that there's many reasons for that. And Alzheimer's, dementia, is a circulatory issue as well. It used to always be heart disease, and now the #1 killer of Australian women is dementia or Alzheimer's. And it's a second leading cause of death amongst all men and women. There was a 447,115 with brain Alzheimer's in 2019, and 250 people are diagnosed each and every day here in Australia. We are at a really emergency as far as how our health is and how our brains are functioning. 250 people a day, and a lot of people fear Alzheimer's more than they fear cancer because none of us want to experience it that. Also, young people are at risk. 36 people die every day, and it's the American ones are even bigger, 5.7 million people. So they're estimating by the year 2050 that Alzheimer's is going to be at 14 million. Can you imagine our culture around that many people? So it's so important for us to have that attitude of, if I'm going to take care of my body and my skin, I want to make my brain a priority as well. And this is kind of my presentation. Nat, yours is very much like mine. But also, one of the biggest issues of brain degeneration in our culture are different medications. So some of our medications, and you may not have known this, but like anti-anxiety medications increase dementia. Antidepressants increase the potential of dementia. Even antihistamines can increase. And the big one is heartburn medications. So long-term heartburn medication, proton pump inhibitors, they can increase the potential for brain degeneration as much as 44%. So you can see that there is a big reason. Nat spoke about our food. I don't know if she pointed out the damaging effects of diet soda. I heard this yesterday in England, because they prove that diet soda has been so damaging to the brains of soldiers. It's been made, they banned it in the British military. All their diet sodas are made with different sweeteners than the aspartame. And of course, our diets are going to be, now none of us want to look like that, have the little tiny brains. And actually, when you have an aging brain, your brain shrinks. So that's just a little bit of what I wanted to share there. And I'll just go back there. Okay. So with Nat's great description of how the EHT works, you understand, first of all, that we have an absolutely unique product that nowhere else on the planet has. EHT was originally designed, it was originally called Me Sports. You might be able to find that on the internet. And it was originally designed for NFL players and a sports supplement because it was enhancing sports and also for good for the TBI and for more concussions, etc. From people. So that was where it was originally came from. But now it's really targeted and marketed as a complete and wellness brain support for any age. So people ask me, well, can kids take it? And I know that Dr. Maxwell Stock's children take it. These are supplements that are 100% safe in all other conditions. If somebody is on a medication, this is what you always say, you must ask your physician. I never ask mine, but you want to say that as a sharing it. If somebody says, oh, my kid has autism, can they take it? And say, I'd be happy to send you the information. It's a very safe supplement, and you can present it to your physician and ask them what they think, or you can use your best, you're their adult, you're the parent, but you do not recommend it for a child or anybody with a health condition to make sure. The number one reason why we have to be so compliant is because the FDA, I don't know who it is here in Australia, but the Federal Drug Administration, when they know something works, they're going to be after it because they're missing out on a lot of money. So they're on the lookout. So we just have to be very, very clear. And people will always ask me, oh, is it good for MS? Is it good for all these different conditions? And we don't have a list of what it's good for. It's good for general brain health. So I encourage people to just give it a try, see what they think. Now, if somebody wants to do a general brain assessment before they start, because we don't have the advantage of a before and after photo, you can do a little before and after questionnaire. So I've got one, I need to improve it. So I'm going to try to work on that in the next couple of weeks, but it's called Fix the Brain, www.fixthebrain.com. And you scroll down about a third of the way on the page and just say, take the assessment. I don't keep track of it and it doesn't score you, but it's going to ask you questions such as, do you get tired when you're driving? When you read, do you get tired really easily? Do you tend to wobble? Are you shaking? Do you get dizzy? All these little things that can help your customer realize that maybe they do have a brain issue when they thought they might not. So that might be something that you want to help your clients. And then after they've been on the product for 3 months, then they can do a reassessment. Now, because with skincare, once we apply the skincare, we're going to see and feel the difference. But none of us are feeling or seeing the difference inside of our brain. And as Nat said, some of it is very, very subtle. So I encourage people to take at least a 90-day trial with our product because we don't know the condition of your neurons. We don't know the condition of your brain. And when you take the product, you may see amazing results right away. You may sleep better, like I'm seeing people say. You may remember better, remember people's names. You may even have a better gait. I don't know. But we want to give it at least 90-day trial so people can see. Now, one of the questions that's posed to me a lot is, I can't really feel a difference. Should I continue to take it? If you're taking calcium and magnesium, and by the way, Nat, I really agree on the bone health, kind of crazy that they would say that. I would not promote it as bone health unless you're a bonehead. If you're a bonehead, then maybe. Now I lost a train of thought. With the supplements that you're using where you're sharing the products, if they're taking calcium and magnesium for their bone health, they don't feel a difference. It doesn't make your bones feel stronger. And the same with neuronal health. You may feel a difference, you may not feel a difference. In my experience over the 3.5 years that I've been selling the product, people really notice it when they stop taking it. Maybe they've been on it a month or 2 or 3 months, and then they stop taking it. And then they realize they're thinking about the hereafter more. In other words, they wonder why they went in the room and what they're hereafter. Try to set your client up, your customer up for giving it at least a 3-month trial before they make a decision on the product, and help them assess where they are themselves so they know what they can look back on. So when you're asking people, introducing this product, you can ask some general brain questions such as, are you constantly losing your keys? Or do you need to use a GPS all the time because you forgot, which turn to take? Or how is your sleep? When you read, do you get really, really tired? Or when you drive, do you get really tired? So those may be some of the questions that you can ask yourself, ask your customer. So you can, again, make it simple, like Rachel said, say, I feel like I might have something that could help you. And this is the simple things that it does, which are laid out. I would memorize those so you know exactly what words to use and that they come out really nice and smooth. So you're never saying, this is great for Parkinson's or it's going to cure autism, or you want to be very, very careful with those things. When someone wants to do a testimony, because you're going to have people that are so excited they want to share, what I recommend is if they put it in writing to not put their diagnosis. So let's say if they have Parkinson's and they've gotten some great results from EHT, they can say, I have had a condition where my hand shakes. And I've noticed since I've been taking some EHT, my hand is more steady. That's totally fine. As soon as you mention that diagnosis, that's when it gets into the odd territories. One of the things that may happen, and we don't want this to happen, is we don't want anybody to be replacing their ADO shipments with their EHT. Because brain health and skin health, it's all going to be very, very important. So you want to transition to somebody to make sure that they're adding it as an addition to their ADO, or they can switch over, buy 2 EHT 1 month and then buy their skin the next month. But if they drop back to that $55 or the 55 CV with it, that's going to be a detriment to your team and eventually to your check. So maybe 2 or 3 boxes at a time. That way they can swap off. And of course, they're going to want to have the EHT for their family as well. Once they get the benefit, they're going to want to be able to share the EHT with their family. And that's where you have that perfect run-in with saying, let's get you started as a brand partner so you can get your family your product, and you can start sharing with your family and friends that don't even live near you, and you can share it. We have, there's only one Australian video that I've seen on YouTube. I don't think we have a back office EHT video, do we yet, Rachel? Not for Australia. That EHT one on YouTube is pretty nice. If you want to share something on YouTube, just make sure you put it on your own YouTube channel, which is pretty easy to do. It's free, and you can just share it so people aren't scrolling into somebody else's YouTube. So you can put up your own testimonials on your own YouTube channel as well. So that's something that's really easy to do. We can show you how to do that if you want to do that. Let's see what else. Nat, I'm just so sorry that I missed so much of your presentation because I don't know what else to add. Does anybody have any questions that I might be able to direct? Because I get questions almost every day that people ask me. And so maybe I can help field some questions, and you might else have it.
Yeah, Deb McGovern has a question. Hang on, I'll just unmute you, Deb.
All right, so what's the difference between huperzine and ginkgo? That's a good question because that's going to come up. They're two very different. Huperzine increases acetylcholine. Oh, Nat, I see you said that. The acetylcholine is a neurotransmitter, and one of the neurotransmitters, the acetylcholine, helps your memory center, and it's very stimulant differently. They've never done any long-term studies on it. So if you Google huperzine A, it's going to say don't take for more than 90 days at a time. Ginkgo has a long, long history, and the main function of ginkgo biloba is to increase oxygen flow to the brain. And as I'm sure Nat told you, we have to have oxygen in the brain for without oxygen, we don't live. So it's going to increase oxygen. Did you know that we have enough blood vessels that if you connected all of our blood vessels, microvessels, your blood vessels, etc., you could go around the world twice? That's almost incomprehensible how many blood vessels we have. And if you're inflamed and those blood vessels are not functioning properly, you're not getting blood flow to the body, you're going to lack blood flow in the brain. Your brain only takes 2% of the space of your body, and it uses 20% of your oxygen. So oxygen is very, very helpful, and ginkgo helps with that. Pregnancy and breastfeeding. Pregnancy and breastfeeding with every supplement that's out there. I'm sure Nat's going to tell you the same thing. We can't recommend it because there's never been any safety studies. So they have to take it upon the advice of their physician or make their own decision about it. Each individual ingredient is considered safe for pregnancy, but we cannot recommend it for them. So ginkgo is in the Australian version, and it's replaced that. Did you hear, it says, I hear antihistamines? Antihistamines specific like Benadryl. Benadryl, if you Google that, you will see that there is definite decrease in brain activity when you're using Benadryl. So long-term antihistamines can cause long-term brain deficits. Some people in America, last month, somebody was arrested because they kept giving their baby Benadryl to sleep, and they accidentally killed their baby from giving them Benadryl.
I'll just pipe up there, sorry Liz. So I think the Benadryl in the US is different to our Benadryl.
Oh, okay.
Benadryl here is a cough mixture.
Oh, yeah, no, so, Benadryl is not.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah. I just wanted to clear that one up. The antihistamines I think you'd be talking about would be like your Phenergan, Valergan, because they're the ones that cross the blood-brain barrier. Your non-sedating antihistamines like your Claritine, Telfast, they don't go across the blood-brain barrier. So the antihistamines which are sedating are the ones who can be detrimental. Sorry, Liz, I just thought before everyone starts telling everyone not to take Benadryl cough mixture.
I'm going to type it in exactly what it is here down here so you can see. There we go. Okay, so that's what you can look up to confirm, and whatever the Australian name is. Okay. All right, so crosses the blood-brain barrier. So the blood-brain barrier, when Nat was talking about gut health, one of the biggest issues, and as she said, it's a very emerging science. One of the doctors who wrote The Grain Brain, he's having to totally redo everything because there's so much more emerging science behind gut health and brain health. And a lot of people have leaky barriers. If you have a leaky gut, you can have a leaky brain barrier, and it can get very confusing. So I don't know, Nat, how you would respond if somebody says, does this cross the blood-brain barrier? How would you answer that?
Well, I would say, are we asking how? Or if it does?
Somebody says, does it cross the blood-brain barrier? That was one of the questions.
I would say yes, because that's how it exerts its effect. Anything that's going to affect the brain, really, unless it's acting in the gut and things, is going to cross the blood-brain barrier to have a direct effect. I don't know. I've never had that question before.
Yeah, I don't know how to answer that either.
Yeah,
I will get back to you on it for that question. All right.
The simple answer is yes. I guess that's how it's going to have its benefit.
Right. So people are asking questions about different drugs. You can also always take the drug that you're questioning and just say, does it affect brain health? And ask Google. So sorry, Rachel, what was that?
Ask Google. Google comes up with all sorts. Ask your doctor. Ask your doctor, guys. Hey, when we were presented EHT at Power Up, they spoke about something a part of EHT replicating oxytocin.
I don't know anything about that one.
Yeah, catch that part? Okay, my second question is, can you share with everybody what's the best way that you want to take EHT for best absorption?
So you want to take it with a fatty meal because it helps absorb it better. And they recommend that on the EHT, the videos, etc. I usually take it with an avocado in the morning, or you can take it any time of the day. It's not a stimulant. So if you want to take your supplements in the evening, that's fine too. I like to take mine first thing in the morning, and I'll usually have eggs or an avocado with it. But you want a little bit of food because it helps process it a little bit better. Really, supplements are interesting because supplements, unlike skincare, we know what's going on in the skin. When you're taking a supplement, we have no idea how your digestion is. You may have very, very poor digestion, as I did when I had that brain injury, and things just come right out. And that's how it used to be for me. No matter what nutrients I had, my body was incapable of breaking it down. So we don't know how your health is going to be. That's why this is going to be so different. And you want to help your clients to let them know once they get started on EHT to say, I would love to check in with you and to ask how it's going, because I really care about you and I care about your health. Is that all right? Because I'd like to kind of check in with you. And even if you can do just a weekly text or a quick phone call just to say, how's it going? And then you can really be able to help answer their calls, other questions. So this gives us an opportunity to really ramp up our, being a really, really good customer service representative. So we're really representing Neora in a beautiful way, and just ask for permission because when you're dealing, and I'm sure Nat will tell you the same thing, when you're dealing with people's health, they're going to ask you every question. They're going to call and say, I'm now constipated. Did it do that? Well, we don't know. Or they're saying, I have really bad headaches ever since I've been taking it. What should I do? So let me explain the easiest way if somebody says, this happened to me, is it the EHT? To take a few days off, and then either try half a tablet and see how you go. And if you're good with half a tablet, add a whole tablet, and then see how it happens. So the American version did cause some people headaches, and usually it went away within a week. And I think that was just the increase of oxygen flow to the brain. So you're going to have so many different issues that you've never had with the skincare. And that's why I recommend keeping a really good customer service contact with them and utilizing it to create that great relationship with them. And share the really great stories. Anytime when we're showing and selling something, we're not selling to ourselves, we're selling to them. So we want to ask more questions than talk and be able to answer those questions intelligently. And if you don't know the answer, just say, you know what, I know somebody that will. I am more than available and open for you can just send me a message. I try to get back to you right away. And if I can't help find the answer, maybe Nat can, or we can find somebody else that will. Mm-hmm. When you're approaching doctors, because I know a lot of you are excited that you are going to be able to talk to doctors about it. Medical doctors are not, from my experience, are not very open to it, unfortunately. There's no double-blind clinical studies, and a lot of medical doctors like those. So if you have your doctor packages ready with all the information and give it to them, you may find really, really open-minded doctors that are willing to try it. You probably know that in the United States under Allison, I've got about 100 medical doctors on the team now. Almost all of them sell to their friends and their customers, but not to their patients. The best way to get to the doctors is have the patients with great results. And then the doctors are saying, what is it you're doing? You're really showing some incredible signs of improvement. And then have that doctor package ready. If you don't, Rachel, I gave you the doctor package link, didn't I?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are all the EHT that I've collected over the time that have information that you can have available for anybody that is a professional. Nutritionists, personal trainers are excellent for this. We had a couple people at our Sydney meeting that said that their times are better, they're stronger, they have more energy. So personal trainers are great to present this to. And pretty much everybody can benefit from EHT. And so start with your regular customers and then branch out with that enthusiasm, excitement for what we have.
I just have one more question. So when we talk about skincare, you know how we talk to people, you know, you really want to have, we know our skincare is magic, but it doesn't work overnight. So, you know, we really put people through you really want to give us 30, 60, 90 days. I say to all of my customers, my new customers, give us 90 days. So then let's talk about where you're at there. And obviously we take before and after photos. But with EHT, can you explain like the 30, 60, 90, you know, people want to know how quickly is this going to take effect?
and that's why it's so hard, because we don't know your current condition. And that's why really taking assessment of, you know, having your customer write down what it is that they're troubled by. A lot of people that are in their 40s and 50s, they realize they're not remembering numbers as quick, or they're forgetting. So have them write that down and just say, okay, we're going to look at what your issues are, and then let's check back in 30 days and see if you mark it. Because you know, our brains, when things go good, we forget that we even had trouble a month ago. So if people don't write down, and you know what I'll do is I'll do my little brain assessment in a PDF. So if somebody wants to use it, and these are general questions that are asked by, they're very, very general. There's nothing diagnostic in them. So I'll put that up on the, send it to you, okay, Rach? Mm-hmm. And that way you don't even have to go online.
Another thing that commonly people ask me is, do I take one? Do I take two? You know, like how would you assess if somebody goes from 1 to 2? Or do they need?
I recommend people start with 1. And if they've got cognitive, real clear cognitive issues that they're complaining to you about, they're saying that they can't remember people's names and they're really struggling for words, you can have them start with 1 for the first week and then double up and see if there's a change. I have one of my nutritionists, her older customer takes 5 every day. And she said it saves her from, you know, having dementia. It really has made a huge difference. So she can take up to, so you can take as many as you want, but I wouldn't encourage that. I just take 1. And if I'm having a hard day, I take 2. A day. So I would say start with 1, because one of the beauties about this is that when I was a professional selling to physicians, I was selling a lot of brain products, and we were recommending 2 tablets 3 times a day. No, hardly anybody's ever compliant to that, but it's really easy. Keeping with our simple system, it's really easy to take 1 a day. And then if they have bigger concerns, or if they've had past concussions or past brain injuries, I'd say, you know, use your own discretion to add more if you feel that that would be beneficial, and check back with them again.
Awesome. Okay, cool. I'm just looking at the time, so I'm going to start wrapping up. I can just see Penny's unmuted. I'm not sure if she wants to ask a question or she's just unmuted. Nope. Okay, cool. I want to thank Liz and Nat. Your knowledge, your expertise is just absolutely magnificent to share with our community. I want to thank everybody for spending some time with us on a Saturday afternoon, for investing into your business. The knowledge we've just learned over the last hour and a half has been incredible. Great questions that you now can start asking people in your world. And like what we said, you know, you don't have to know all that medical information. It's interesting. You know, it's interesting to know what's going on inside our body. So that was just absolutely fantastic. I love EHT. I love what it's done for me. If you haven't started taking it yet, you just really want to get it into your body and just experience what it does, because it's fantastic. Thanks everybody for coming along, for sharing our Saturday call together. I can see we've got some Kiwis in the house too. It's great to have you guys on board with us too. For everybody else, you know, have an incredible day. I will definitely put this recording to different leaders that are here right now. If you haven't got hold of it in the next 48 hours, please just message me so I can share that with you. And have an incredible rest of your week. weekend. Go out and be amazing, and we will see you all for Monday night training. Same channel, 8 p.m. Brisbane time. I don't know where everybody else in the world is. Anyone and everyone is welcome to come along. Great to see you all, and have a great time. See you all. Thanks, Nat.
Thanks, Rach.
Really appreciate your wealth of knowledge.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your weekend. Bye-bye.
Thank you so much.